Good evening, folks. Welcome. Today's date is February 28th. And just pardon me while I just make sure my camera's lined up. Okay. Sorry about this, folks, but because this is just a one raw take and there's no multi-clip editing or so, I've got this camera on a sort of tripod. So anyway, I'm here to this evening talk about something a little different. Usually my thing has been no food reviews or other things or something, but what I'm here this evening to talk about is people with disabilities and how they live independently. Now specifically, I'm speaking from the perspective, from the point of view of a blind person or vision impaired, low vision, or whatever, visually challenged, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, so while I just check the time here. Anyhow, so what I'm talking about is people living out in the community independently or with, like two friends living together or a partner or significant other, something like that. Unfortunately, well, it's not that way just here in Canada, but in the US and many parts of the world, there are lots of blind and vision impaired people, especially, that are not employed because, well, a lot of it's not necessarily through any fault of our own, because a lot of employers are apprehensive about hiring someone with a vision impairment. So, it's not just vision impairment, but other disability. Vision, that's what I said, I'm talking about the visually impaired. So, for the record, this video is going to be about visually impaired people being independent, living independent, my education was at a school for the blind, the W. Ross McDonald School for the Blind, where I was a student for 14 years. And because of the way the curriculum was set up, most people stayed longer than through the regular school, where you usually go 12 or sometimes 13 years if you do grade 13 or later years Ontario Academic Credit, or OAC as it's called here in Ontario. And I'm sure other jurisdictions had other equivalents too to that. And the school was a residential school, and many of us learned many independent living skills. I didn't learn as much as some others because I still had partial sight. Because if you've been following my videos, it's been just like within the last 4 years my vision deteriorated. So anyway, students there would learn to live, like a lot of living skills, like how to cook, to do household chores like cleaning and grocery shopping and such. And they would learn during the week, and some that lived further away, like up in extreme northern parts of Ontario or eastern, like Ottawa, and far east that was too far to travel with more than a few hours away to travel by bus, would fly home by plane. And at some point, up to the mid 1980s, there were students that were from Western Canada that attended the school. But they, those students, eventually the governments there no longer subsidize traveling. But anyway, getting back to the point here, is how many of us students would learn to be independent. And once we leave the school, those that were able to would go to college or university, and then the goal would be to find some kind of work, employment, after finishing college, university. So many of the students, some students were successful and did quite well for themselves, while others tried and weren't able to. And besides blind and vision impairment, there were students that were multiple handicaps as well. Mostly there were some minor physical handicaps at the time, and of course later on there were more pronounced, like multi-handicapped students that were other psychological or mental issues as well. And some of those affected some of the people's ability to function as independent as someone that just the only thing wrong with them was their eyes didn't work. So there were students that that were sheltered. What I mean by being sheltered is that the parents would protect the students, and they would be convinced that, oh, they can't function on their own, they can't function out in society, they're better off staying home with the parents, and they don't need to be learning. And there were a few students that didn't even bother applying themselves because they felt, why should I? You know, I've got mom and dad to do it, so what do I need to learn to do that for, or learn to cook or learn to do laundry and stuff when I've got mom and dad to do that? Okay, well, that's good in the short term, but then over the years go by, they get older, and the parents get where it's harder to take care of them, and so then they're stuck. They either have to go and get some kind of assistant living, or they have to fend for themselves and run into problems, or or other family members have to step in and take over the responsibility. And sometimes they can be the potential being mistreated or taken advantage of. And some of these people have the same experience with when they're with the parents, which is going to be, you know, a topic of another video. But some of these people, us blind and visually impaired, get here in Ontario. We get ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program, and of course in the United States, if you're in the U.S. and watching this, or of course you know what, you know, they get there. Of course the U.S. is SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or and their system works a little bit differently. Sometimes their family parents or somebody in their family puts into that, or they put in now, or it's put in after. It's a little bit different than our system here. But some people do acknowledge, and for the records too, some people do stay with their parents or family members, because with being on ODSP, you just barely get enough to live on if you're lucky. And with rents going up and up and up, that's continued skyrocketing. The last few years especially, it's gotten worse. Like I'm, for example, paying about $790 roughly, give or take a few cents. That's $800, and the maximum amount for anyone, the full maximum amount for anyone with the Ontario Disability Support, ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program is what it actually refers to. They get $1,169 as of right now, as of 2022, and that's been the last couple of years has been that amount. And because geared to income housing, affordable housing is difficult for anybody to get, not just people on ODSP, but anyone with low income, because as mentioned, rents are very high. So with that said, it's difficult for people. So a lot of people, they have to go as a roommate, and that's where it's a good thing when couples, or, you know, people that do want to live together, you know, be it a roommate or be partners, like significant others, be it common law, or maybe even get married if they're lucky, they get together and they share the cost of it on ODSP, which can be done if you budget properly and do everything the way you can. And that's the argument of some of these people that that are being sheltered, is the argument that no, you don't need to be doing that. You know, you don't need to be out there and all that when you've got everything you need here, and we can take you where you need to go, and yada yada yada. And so that is that scenario there. So and it's unfortunate that this happens. But I just recently had a conversation, actually last evening, on Zoom with some people from the school that I went to, and conversation was had about some people that just one person just doesn't even want to, doesn't even try to help himself. They can't do some of the basic things, like they can't even hang up a coat on their own. They can't do a thing for themselves. Others can, but just, well, you know, whatever. And others is, yeah, I want to, but my parents say no, and blah, 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 and this and that. So, well, some others, they do get in their own, they're physically in their own place, but their parents are still, or other people, their family are still trying to meddle in their, try to take, control more than they need to and stuff like that. So some of these people, like, and then some even, they'll control their ODSP. They'll take charge of the disability and not let people like myself. Well, I've never had that problem myself, but others have, where the parents have tried to dictate, oh, you don't need that, or you want to even, like, you want to go for a cup of coffee, or just just spend a couple dollars on something. Oh, that's wasting money. You don't need to waste money on stuff like that. Or they want to buy a CD, or, well, the back in the day was a cassette or CD. Now it's, well, lots on MP3, or they want to spend it on, use it for their own needs. And, oh, that's wasting, that's foolish. You don't need to waste money on stuff like that. And it's pretty common that this kind of thing happens with people. And it's when people don't bother, which it's frustrating. And I know there are some others that who are being controlled or sheltered. They stand up for themselves and say, look, I can do this myself. I want to do this. And I applaud these people that stand up for themselves and do that. While others, like, no, I have to depend on my parents. They have to make the decisions for me, and because, oh, I've got a handicap, I can't, or, oh, you've got some medical issues that you can't, and some of them may do, but my opinion is this, and then, because I don't want to ramble on too long, but basically my thought on that is, if you can do it yourself and have the ambition and learn to do it yourself, okay, then you show them, look, I can do this. And if it really is a challenge, then if there's going to be with somebody, or someone else is going to look out for you, then by all means, there should be no reason why said individuals can't do that. Like, I'm just a hypothetical example. I'm not going to mention names. If John Doe wants to get in a relationship with Jane Smith, a common law, and they're both vision impaired or whatever on ODSP, well, they work together, and one has a little bit, some maybe confidence issues, and the other is a little more confident. Well, why not? They reassure the others, they work together and just build up. They build up and can work together and make things work. Because I've talked to people at the blind school, like that were at the school during my time there, that I've honestly thought weren't sure how they were going to manage after leaving the school, what happened, what would become of them later in life. Would they get out on their own or what? And they have done surprisingly well. And I applaud those people. And I also know in the States too, there's a lot of blind and low vision individuals too that have the same situation, where they're controlled by families. People decide that, oh, what they need, or they think they know what they need, when they're confident in themselves, and then they feel like, oh, I can't, and then if they're convinced they can't, then of course then that happens, and then they can't get anyone to help later. Oh my gosh, if what am I going to do, what am I going to do? And, well, if you thought about it years earlier, we maybe would have been more confident. So now this is not a knockdown, because I know there are some people where they just can't function because of whatever disability. As I say, I'm just speaking for the blind and vision impaired, but I know there's other issues like anxiety, or they just, some people might have anxiety or other emotional issues that they can't handle being on their own. That's certainly understandable. But there is help out there, and there are options out there, that it's nice if the parents want to do it, and they have a good relationship, and they work, and they're encouraged to do what they can on their own. That's different, because because I know able-bodied people live with their folks too, and they have their own lives too. They do whatever they do, and they just stay with the parents so they don't have to spend so life isn't, the cost of living isn't so high for them. They can save up money and eventually get their own place and go from there. So anyway, I'd been wanting to do this for a while, so I just thought I would come here and speak. And again, I put the camera on the tripod, so I hope I'm positioned okay. And so in the meantime, you have a good rest of the day whenever you watch this, and see you in the next video.